Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This is being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I love that John, wakes up and he's got, his house full of the Legends. And it's like, to be fair, as we know, John's always been a loner. He's had his rock band lifestyle in the past and stuff like that, but, since becoming the master of the dark arts and stuff like that, he's been a loner. He's lived alone, so, because that's always the thing, too. He's never with the Legends for long periods of time. He kind of always comes in and comes out, because I think for him, he doesn't do well with a lot of people. He kind of enjoys his space, his solitude, but I think he also enjoys being around people, too. So it's just like, everyone doing their thing, and it's just like, even Spooner setting up traps. He's like, right, you want to step on certain tiles, you don't want to step on the other ones, not unless you want to get poisoned inside. You're just like, it's just one thing after another. Bayrod's getting high with the pizza guy after you order 12 pizzas. It's like, yeah, they don't have Gideon to make stuff for them, and you have Ava trying to MacGyver something together to get Gideon, which she ultimately does, and it works, but it's a very glitched Gideon. Nate's playing on his guitar, even breaks it at one point in time. Astra's trying her magic, it's just everyone's doing their thing, and I'm loving it. But obviously he leaves with Zari, because it's just right, I need a break from all of this. And in the time they were gone, they found out about an alien committing some slaughter in an asylum in the 50s, and it was an alien using the name Sarah. So Bayrod and Spooner go, and lo and behold, who is it? None other than Amelia Earhart. I was like, so you're the one that stole the ship, which we'll get to Rory's side of things soon enough. I was like, you're interesting. I guess it makes sense because, but it was really interesting that they bring her back, and it's right, we're going to wait for her to, get off the meds, and then we're going to ask her. Spooner's no, we don't have to, kill them or anything like that. And they're like, oh, Spooner, look at you. She's like, yeah, I'm growing. It's like, oh, good for you. And she's like, yeah, well, we can use their deepest fears against them. And it's like, okay, there we go. So, her and Bayrod are going to go play good cop, bad cop. Well, play good, bad cop, Bayrod cop. And it's like, yeah, got this. And obviously they do their thing. But she's a little, because at this point they're thinking she's an alien. She's not the real Amelia Earhart, but we as the audience know that she really is Amelia Earhart. She's just fused with an alien. I thought we end up finding out later on. I'm jumping around a little bit, but I thought she was just made with alien parts. I didn't realize she was actually fused with an alien. That was a really interesting development of I guess that was hit the Bishop's plan is the fuse. We know he wanted to make them part alien stuff like that, but I thought it was maybe make some alien DNA in them and make them kind of mutate their DNA to incorporate the alien DNA. I thought that's what was going on. It's no, he basically put aliens in, he fused aliens with them. So we're kind of doing a fusion dance, but not a full-blown fusion dance type of situation, which was interesting. Granted, Amelia finally flips out the moment Ava comes about, because Ava find out, she's I landed my airship, and it's the airship was a Wave Rider she stole, so it's Sarah nor Rory are up there, so she's I'm gonna get some answers, and they end up drugging Amelia and popping her on the ship. And so it's a thing of right, John's I know some magic that can let us read our memories, but my apprentice, let's leave this up to her. And I'm I was so you're not going to tell the Legends your situations. The point he brings up later on is kind of interesting. He's suggesting right, because at first I was I think, because he says how useful will I be without magic? And Zara's I'd find good uses for you or something like that. And I'm is that actually the reason why you haven't told the Legends? Because them specifically, because you're scared that if they found out you didn't have magic, they toss you aside because you'd feel that was your only use to them, which is interesting. Magic or no magic, John, you've always got a place amongst the Legends. You're just as an outsider / misfit as everyone that's a part of the Legends, But he also brings up another good point of right, I can't let anyone topside or below know I don't have my magic. It's right, he's pissed off a lot of people, especially, probably people topside and below. Because I was who would come? I was no, there's probably plenty of monsters or magical people, or just people with magic in general you screwed over the years. It might even just be regular people you screwed over the years, and they will want your head, along with plenty of demons and stuff you sent back to hell, and just whatever in hell waiting for you. So I guess he's worried that if he tells the legends, they'll tell other people. But I think there might be a little bit. I think it is a little bit of that thing of I might be wrong, but I like to think I might be right about Jon in a sense. At the very least, not telling the legends, not because he's worried about them blabbing their mouth. Maybe that's a possibility, but also because he's worried that they might not feel the need to keep him around anymore. Zari was kind of piecing it together that there was something up, because even Ava was kind of noticing it. Like, right, he's like, oh, no, let Astra handle this spell, because she was looking like, well, why are you acting like that? So, but Astra kind of is like, right, I told him I wanted to take the lead, and so he pretends like he still has magic, and Astra kind of lights his thumb up to pretend like he does. So, Astra's like, you do owe me. I wonder what that favor is going to end up being. I mean, obviously, it's like he's still going to be teaching her anyway, because he needs her to. Because it's not like I'm starting from the beginning. It's like, I'm straight up 0. At the very least, Astra may be level 1, but he's currently level 0. So once again, like, whether that's something that can be remedied, like with enough time, he can level up slowly but surely, or is it just like every bit of magical energy that was there inside of him, everything magic related that was there, because he's actually really good at magic. Magic came, I think he's kind of a genius when it comes to magic, I believe. So like all of that, like, ability to use magic, I think is completely zapped from him. Once again, like, it's unclear like how like that cleansing spell fully works, and if there's a way of reversing it. But for now, Astra's going to be like the Dark Master in this situation, granted the Dark Apprentice, when it comes to all this dark magic. So we'll see kind of how that turns out. But she was the one that inside of Amelia's memories found out, like, right, she was human, she was experimented on, and now they're like, because at first, Spooner was like, yeah, she actually feels human even though we know she's an alien. But this got Spooner thinking, and it didn't even cross. I think it came up in my mind earlier, like, what if she's like, she thinks like, oh, somebody did something to her, but it's like, what if they did, like, that maybe there's more going on here, that like maybe it isn't just like a chip or something inside your brain. Now even she's starting to think, what if I'm like Amelia? Like, what if I was fused with an alien too and I just don't know it? Because Amelia went full-blown transformation. That's what kind of shocked me. I was like, oh, because we saw her partially transform when she attacked Sarah and Gary, but we never saw the full transformation. So, but that's to showcase like she's part alien, And so Spooner kept hearing the voice because she was kind of scared, like, right, you're going to have to kill me. Like, you don't want to get too close to me when you're ultimately going to have to kill me. And it's like, I love Bear being like, oh, so you know about my plan to kill all the legends? And she's like, no, like, seriously, like, the fact is I spoke that thing's language. The fact is that I could end up becoming it. Like, what if I become more and more like it? But, like, Behrad, being the laissez-faire dude that he is, it's kind of like, nah. One thing you got to know, that there is no past or future. He's like, I know it's ironic to say that considering we're on a time machine, but all you have to do is live in the now, because now is all you have, Because he was talking to like, it's like, oh, we have these nomenclatures for like, and names for stuff, but it's like, and the priest guy was like, so we're all Behrad. He's like, yes. And at the same time, we're all not, it's like, so we're everything and nothing at the same time. Very like, whoa, straight out, that's crazy, man, type of vibes, but that's Behrad for you. But I thought, it's like, yeah, but I think his words kind of were necessary for Spooner to hear. But then, like, ultimately she goes talking to the alien and talking in its language, because she talks about the fact that, well, the alien's like, I was strong, but by fusing with Amelia, it made me weak. But now I guess it's on the forefront, because before, like, both of their consciousness were activated. But I think now it's because that's why when Astra was trying to read its memories, like, she couldn't fully, because it's basically two different memories, two different consciousnesses put together. And we've had this conversation recently about multiple consciousnesses kind of existing at the same time, of what that was, because I referenced, like, last episode I referenced the 100, because I thought that's what Sarah and Bishop's situation was. Turns out that's not the case, but we'll get to that in a second. But it's I thought it was like a blending of like consciousnesses, and eventually one completely overwrites the other. But I think now that it's fully transformed, Amelia was gone. Luckily, Ava showed up, ended up killing it, saving Spooner. But it was saying, like, basically her fear is kind of like, there. So it's like, I guess also the fear of, like, what if she is something else too? What she is. And I think looking at it now is making her think, like, she can't take Behrad's advice. Like, she's starting to wonder whether, she is something like that. So I don't know if she's going to open up to the team about that necessarily. Behrad knows about her fears, but whether it ends up being true or not, it's a whole other question. But like she admits that she killed Sarah, which we know that's not the case. We'll talk about that later. Well, at the time, and Ava kind of breaks down, learning that because, so there's that side of things. Then on the other side of things, we have Sarah with Bishop. It turns out Bishop is a clone, which I was like, oh, with the Ava clones and Bishop being a clone, I'm like, okay, we got some without spoil. There's some Orphan Black going on here. We'll leave it at that. If you've seen Orphan Black, you know what I'm talking about. I was like, I wasn't expecting it. I'm surprised I didn't think. Because I referenced Orphan Black last time because I was like, #Clone Club. Yeah. But it's like, I never, it's interesting. It's like, this is more Orphan Black than you would think in certain regards. But Bishop is a clone himself. That's how he's still alive. And he's like, you're never going to figure it out. But Sarah immediately figured it out. He was almost like, well, I guess I'm not, not the genius he claims to be. But for him, the difference between him and the Avas were basically blank slates to kind of serve a purpose. For him, it's like I copied every aspect of who I am in a clone. So it's, he's like, I'm nothing like them. Because for him, it's like, he's got all these multiple Avas running around because they're just fake people. But for him, it's like, no, I'm different because there's only one me walking around at a time, But I was able to because all a brain is like synapses and like electricity and electrons and stuff like that fire in your head. So it's like all that's copyable. So it's actually interesting, which is interesting considering he says all that smack about Sarah's Ava just being a clone, but it's like you're a clone yourself, but also you still think of yourself higher than the Ava clones because they're more of a blank slate because you designed it that way. But you, it's like no. But it's also that's where this episode really gets to get really existential with that storyline. But obviously, he's giving Sarah a chance of right, you're going to join me because she's like, as smart as you are and what you're capable of, you could change the future. But he's like, I am saving the future in my own way. For him, it's like this is the best way possible. But it's like you probably could use this technology and all that you could use that to save the world. But it's like you found a roundabout way. I think because this roundabout way makes him superior in a different way. I think it makes him like, maybe his way of doing things wasn't going to make him the savior of Earth like this will. So maybe that's his justification, or he's just the mad scientist that he is, and is like, I want to go down the Frankenstein route. Who knows why he decided to go down this route rather than any other way. I mean, maybe he felt like there was no other way, or maybe he came up with this way and he's just like, I'm going to stick with this. I'm not going to bother trying to think up anything else. Regardless, Gary coming in through the pipes and everything, and just Sarah being so disgusted. And he was like, I haven't found the power cells and everything. She's like, okay, Gary, you go back down there. He's like, I wish I could take you with me. But it's like, he basically describes his form, his people are kind of like octopuses. So that was interesting. So he went up through the toilet, came back down through the toilet. It's just like, ugh. But okay, so Sarah's playing along with Bishop being like, hey, I surrender, you're right, let bygones be bygones. I'll forget about the fact is you kidnapped me and you kind of forget and help me, against my will, but you forget the fact is I snapped your neck. Bygones, he's like, bygones, he's like, yes. It's like he's such a self-centered narcissist. He's like, oh my god, this is so easy, this is amazing. I guess it's because he's so full of himself that he's like, I'm getting what I want, so there's no way I always get what I want, so there's no way I'm not getting what I want. So he's happy about it, but obviously Sarah's playing him. But at the same time, we have Kayla and Nick out and about on a planet. She ends up serving him up because he goes to attack one of the Ava clones, but ends up getting caught, and she's like, not scared, just smart, and kind of leaves him alone. Then Gary coming to get the power cell. It's like, she rats Gary out. He gets taken. It's like, biggest idiot in the galaxy. It's like, biggest idiot, but the biggest heart too. It's super sweet, in my opinion. But upon hearing about this, it's like Bishop's like, Rory's here. Actually here to save her, because he was telling Sarah no one's actually going to come rescue. It's like, nope, people did. Mick in particular. So he lowers their barrier to kill them. But the Ava clone's like, the black-haired Ava, is that a different Ava clone? Because at first I was like, is that supposed to be the nurse clone just with a different way? But I'm like, I think it's just a different clone in general. But it's like, she's serving the food and stuff like that. But it's like, no, but what about the other Avas? It's like, they'll survive. Or, they'll be replaced. So, get to it. But this Ava was kind of having reservations. Like, I'm killing my sisters. Okay, Because it's like, they already have Mick, so we could just bring them here. It's like, no, that's too much trouble. Let's just kill him. because Sarah's already chosen our side. So it's like, we're leaving the past behind us. Which Sarah finding that out about later is like, I said let's put the past behind us, not let's kill each other's friends. It's like, no, it's fine. Well, too late. He's already dead. Which they left Mick to die. But luckily, he breaks free, and he has the mask. So he's like, suckers. That worked out. Because, like, good thing he didn't listen to Kayla, because Kayla was like, oh, like, leave the mask. Like, you don't need it, breathable air and stuff like that as long as the barrier's up. But it's like, nah, good thing he kept it on him. And Kayla, and it's affected by the poison as well. So she got the power cell, and she's dragging it, but air, it's tough for her to breathe. So Mick ends up sharing it with her. Rather, he's like, well, he makes the excuse, this is heavy, so they're kind of cooperating, but for her it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you know, the fact is, you humans, like, you're this, you're that, you're terrible, you know, you're a weak species and stuff like that. And she was like, aren't you going to correct me? He's like, no, like, my species does suck. Like, they lie, they betray, they lock people up. But he's like, but Sarah's different. That's why I have to say her. I was like, oh, that's sweet. Because I think, in all honesty, it's because Sarah accepts him for him. He's never had to change for Sarah. He's always been able to just be him. And it's like, because Sarah is someone who has, you know, her complicated past. And I think because of that, she has a different perspective. You know, I mean, I think that's why, like, because Mick has never found too many people that have just kind of accepted him for him. I mean, granted, the legends have in general, but I think it's like Sarah was the first person that it's like, she's not like every other person in the world, you know? So it's like, she's very unique in her own right. That's why he feels the need, he wants to save her. I was like, oh, that's actually super sweet, you know? And so, granted, they end up running from the creatures that Amelia was made from, because this is their planet. And they get back on the ship and everything. And it's like, well, if we can't take off, we're just going to have to fight. But then they end up inside of a pod, and it's like, well, you know, she's like, you're right. I've said the whole thing of I'm not scared, but smart. But she's like, honestly, I was scared back there. You know, probably the time to do something not smart. And because, like, no one's ever accused me of being smart. I was like, are we about to? And they do it. I'm like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I figured as much. The moment Kayla turned into a human form, I'm like, oh, yeah, her. I mean, to be fair, doing their thing, which I love that, like, because this is the sick, because he ended up going back in time and getting his high school sweetheart at the reunion or whatever, got her pregnant. So... and obviously that's why he has a daughter now. So I was like, oh, like, Mick is like hooking up quite a bit. Oh, to be fair, I was about to say, like, it's like, nah, Constantine and Zari are doing their thing. Like, if Ava and Sarah were together, they'd be doing their thing as well. So, but it's like, oh, it's interesting. I was kind of hoping that that's where we were going, and it's like, yeah, that's where we're going. Yeah. So that's gonna be interesting, especially considering she's supposed to be engaged to Gary. I'm wondering, I figured this is where we're going to end up, but I'm like, I'm so curious to see where that kind of storyline ends up taking us, which we'll get to Gary in a second. But you know what? I forgot to bring it up, like, what was it, episode 4, maybe, with Kayla and Mick at the end. I'm not too surprised this is happening, because let's not forget the character he created for his Rebecca Silver novels, like that, alien warrior princess who actually came to life. What was that, season 4 that she came to life? Because I think it was during the Godzilla episode, if I'm not mistaken, when the dude who made Godzilla, like, had something that can make things come to life and stuff like that. I think that's when Mick brought her to life. Maybe that was at a different episode, I don't remember, but like, he brought her to life. I think they had a thing too, didn't they? So that him getting with Kayla immediately kind of clicked that together in my brain. But, you know, that's where I just thought of. But interesting enough, Gary shows up. He had saved one of the clones, which I love. They immediately bring up the whole, like, oh my god, that's the one that ate Group D or Squad D or whatever. And he's like, honestly, I'm super sorry about that. I mean, even though they were super delicious. But if I'd known they were Ava's, I never would have. But it's like, no, he's a hero, which I love that you're like, oh, Gary the hero. I mean, Gary's come through, but I'm sure hearing that's kind of nice, especially from an Ava. But he doesn't let it get to it, and it's like, oh my god, he's like, yeah, like, the fact is I saved you guys because Avas are awesome. Like, you know, the Ava I know is a great leader. It's like, wait, Ava, leader? No, we're meant to serve. It's like, no, the Ava I know is a great leader. It's like, whoa, she must be really great if someone as amazing as you serve. He's like, well, I mean, I could say, like, you know, I wouldn't say I'm the best, kind of, assistant, but pretty great. And it's like, oh my god, it's like, yeah, because she, it's like Ava's strong and has amazing hair like you, and it's just like, and then like one of the Ava clones walk over to him. I'm like, are we about to make this weird where like, I don't know, like it seemed like they were vibing a little bit in that moment. So I'm like, wait, are we gonna have like an Ava clone and Gary? Is that about to be a thing? I was like, I don't know, man, that'd be interesting. So we have that. Going back to Sarah and Bishop, Sarah proceeds to beat the ever-living shit out of Bishop for what he did. So I love that she ends up just dragging his body, just slapping his hand on like doors to open them because she's trying to like make sure he doesn't come back. But I thought was really interesting the speech she tells, because him, like, she's like, my scars make me who I am. Like, everything I've ever been through, those scars are tied to memories that have led me to become who I am. All of the good and the bad has led me to who I am. But the problem with you, Bishop, is, like, you have no scars. The fact is that we both died and come back, but at least I've learned from my past, my scars. You haven't. And he's like, and you have no scars on you. I was like, douchebag, she means it metaphorically. And then we see a hand almost like, no! And we find out this Sarah's a clone. The real Sarah Lance died. And it was like, oh, and that's why I'm like, this is going to get super existential, because this Sarah is a clone, and obviously she's with Ava, who's a clone. But obviously Ava showcases that not all clones are just like clones. Like, this whole mindset he has about, the whole mindset he has about the Avas is disproven with our Ava. But now it's like, oh, you, Sarah, are like me. Like, I cloned you. But now Sarah's going to be thinking like, wait, like, her perspective on clones might be a little different, because it's like, right, Ava fell in love with the real me, but I'm a clone. Like, how would she feel about it? How I feel about it? It's very existential, and it's really sad on multiple levels. One, Amelia Earhart is dead. Like, the sad thing is, I guess that kind of fits with history in the sense that we never found out what happened to her. Kind of a crazy story to kind of think, like, obviously, it's just kind of crazy to think that this is her canon or something like that. But it's also sad, like, they weren't able to kind of save her, because I don't know if there would have been any separating the alien from her, which maybe that kind of plays into Spooner's story. We have to wait and see. But it's sad to know that the Sarah we've known is dead to a certain extent. I mean, to be fair, there's also the Sarah we knew to a certain extent kind of already died in season 2, when she died when they basically created a paradox, and she ended up disappearing because that timeline no longer existed. So there's that, but it was still, that's an existential thing already, because you've already kind of gone through this, because you've already watched a version of yourself disappear from time. So it's like, is this really any different? I mean, that was a version of you. But a clone is a version of you. Like I said, you could get super existential about this, but like, let's not forget, you've already kind of been through this in many different regards. I mean, it's like when you came back from the Lazarus pit, you weren't necessarily the same Sarah anymore. I mean, she's had so many interesting word I'm about to use about to say rebirths. Because the reason why I say it's interesting, because that's the title of this week's episode of Batwoman. So I just think it's interesting. Which I have not seen at the time of recording this. I watched Legends first and recording it, then I'm going to watch Batwoman and record my review. So, beside the point, but it's just kind of interesting to think about it. Like, So, I'm curious to see how Sarah handles it. So, it's a little sad, but at the same time, she's still Sarah. I mean, we don't know if there's going to be, I mean, like, she's like a perfect clone, so it's like, but it's still kind of sad on some level to know that. It's like, Sarah's still alive, but it's like not the Sarah we knew, but like I said, who and what is anyone, You're everyone and nothing at the same time type of thing. Like, so it brings even that Beirut thing into it. It's just, that's going to be so interesting to see how this turns out. Because she might keep that a secret from Ava. She might not let anyone know about that. So it's really going to be interesting to see where all this takes us. Because you also know what that means? That means Amelia, well, the alien inside of Amelia was right about, like, oh, I killed Sarah. She did, actually. That's why I was like, that's a sad aspect about it. Because I was about to say, like, when it got to that point, it's like, nah, Sarah's alive. Sarah, Ava, you're going to give up hope, but you shouldn't. But it's like, oh, well, Sarah did die, but she's alive. Oh, it's a whole thing, I guess there was no, like, once that poison is so poisonous, there's no cure for it. Or maybe there is, and Bishop just didn't have it. But I guess he wanted to ease her, like, oh, make her think, like, oh, I'm going to help you. But it's like, no, I'm just going to put you to sleep while you died. Maybe that's all there was to it. I guess that should have been the sign, too. Like, if you look in retrospect, it's like, she still has the ring from Ava. It's like, that was probably a clue the entire time. Like, oh, interesting, she still doesn't have her engagement ring, But regardless, I'm very, very excited to see where ultimately all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good